I saw a bit of a comic bit in the newspaper some time ago under the heading, When the Family Buys a Car. Father, how many miles to the gallon? Mother, what color is the upholstery? The son, how fast will she go? The daughter, let's see the mirror. And the neighbor, how on earth can they afford it? And as each of us will talk about those details which interest us and omit the others. One more story, if you can bear with me. A student copied this from the Louisville Courier Journal some time ago. It's about a young mother who came to the door of the nursery and saw her husband, a lumber dealer, standing over the baby's crib. Silently, she watched him as he stood looking down at the sleeping infant. In his face, she read rapture, doubt, admiration, ecstasy, incredulity, wonder. Deeply touched, with eyes glistening, she tiptoed to his side and put her arms around his neck. A penny for your thoughts, my dear, she whispered. Startled into consciousness, he blurted, for the life of me, I don't see how they can make a crib like that for $4. Well, the things that interest some of us are not the things that interest others of us. And I suppose I've merely been trying to say one very small thing, namely, that at the end of anything we say, there is more. That so far as we know, more can be said. Well, what does this mean in everyday life? So what, I suppose, is again the obvious question. What difference does it make that the moment a man starts talking, he talks about what he talks about and he omits the remainder? I should like to discuss some of the varieties of human behavior which take place when people forget this. What happens in the hurry and scuffle of the daily grind when people go about their work unaware of this simple wisdom? And I should like, just as a way of introducing the subject, to ask you, have you ever run onto people who in conversation or argument leave you with the feeling that what they say about anything is all there is to be said about it? Have you ever run onto people in the course of your business or non-business activities who leave you with the feeling, well, I've said it, period, nothing more remains to be said? I want to talk about that attitude, and I want to give it a name. We call it the disease of allness. And by allness, I merely mean the attitude, the manner, the mood, the way of thinking and talking in which a person implies, or sometimes says, that what he knows about anything is all there is to be known about it. And I should like to discuss some of the implications and difficulties that we get into. Now, I very rarely see anybody who comes right out and says, what I know about it is all there is to be known or all there is to be said. I very rarely see it so baldly as in Clarence Day's play, Life with Father. You may remember in Act 2, Scene 1, Father has been wanting a conversation with his eldest son, Clarence, about some man-to-man thing. And they've had some trouble, but finally they're alone, and Father turns and says, Clarence, there are things about women that I think you ought to know. Women aren't the angels that you think they are. You see, Clarence, we men have to run this world. It's not an easy job. It takes work and it takes thinking. Now, you take a woman thinks. Nope, I'm wrong right there. A woman doesn't think at all. She gets stirred up, and then she tries to get you stirred up, too. But if you can keep reason and logic in the argument, a man can hold his own, of course. But if they can switch you, pretty soon the argument's about whether you love them or not. I swear I don't know how they do it. But if you watch out and know just how to handle them, you'll be all right. All a man has to do is to be firm. But Clarence, who's been observing things around the Day's household, interrupts and says, yes, Father, but what can you do when they cry? And Father says, well, that's quite a question. You just have to make them understand that what you're doing is for their own good. And now, Clarence, you know all about women. Well, that's Father. Father is much too bald, much too explicit, much too overt. Most of the time, I don't see allness that way. I see allness in much subtler forms. And I should like to discuss at least one of those subtler manifestations of this difficulty. I'd like to talk about it in terms of the problem of unteachability. The problem of human unteachability. Now, I see that. Anybody who ever teaches in a classroom sees it, but I see it particularly in some experience I've had teaching policemen. Now, some of my best friends are policemen, delightful people on the whole once you get to know them. But I almost at this moment can vividly remember, recall some of the first meetings I had with some of the police classes that I've tried to teach. As I enter the room and stand before them, you can almost see the faces in front of you. You can almost see the attitude on their faces as if they were saying to themselves, well, go ahead. Say anything that we haven't heard before. Say anything that we, in our vast and infinite wisdom, don't know about. And may I say, as long as that attitude persists, as long as it prevails, not very much learning takes place. They don't learn very much. That is, they act as if what they now know is all there is to be known. And until somehow the wall of allness has been broken through, not very much acquisition of information or anything else takes place. And may I say, even though I feel that some of the policemen I know are good friends of mine, nevertheless, there are all sorts of things they ought to learn. May I show it this way? Let this circle be, imagine it's a very, very big one. And imagine that in it there are a very, very great number of small circles. And every one of these small circles stands for some aspect of the great subject. Thus, with respect to each of these might be one tiny detail of the apple we could talk about. And thus, whenever I talk, I select some things, and the remaining are omitted. Now, these policemen know a very great deal about their job. But so long as they come to feel that what they know about it is all there is to be known about it, as I say, not very much learning takes place. And the first task, from one point of view, of the teacher or the educational process is to break through that wall of allness so that reception, retentivity, becomes possible. May I tell you about this phenomenon in another way, in terms of some